All right. I think we can go ahead and get started.
Let's do this.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. I had to look at the time because I've been Zooming since 9:30 this morning. But we are so excited to have you guys here. If you don't know who I am, my name is Ariel Brandy, and I was just reelected to serve as president of Indiana Young Democrats. And I'm so excited because Indiana Young Democrats is really changing the way that democratic politics is done in the state of Indiana. We're electing young people into office, and we are becoming the voice of our party here, and making sure that we're calling out the disparities that are going on within our state, within our party, and really being an advocate and voice for young people in this state. And so I'm so excited to have my friend here, my brother, literally like a brother to me, because we spent almost a year together, side by side, journeying through
doing the work. Nothing bonds you like a campaign. I'm telling you, there's something about that experience. If you've never been on a campaign, the best way to describe it is like, remember that feeling when you had camp friends? And it was just like the friends you make in like a super intense environment where it's just y'all. Like, imagine that, but it's like it lasts for 9 months and you're like the fate of the democracy is on the line. It's just like it forges a lot of friendships.
It does. And it's beautiful to see. You know, we've laughed together, we've cried together, we've strategized how to take over the world together. We've done all of the work, and we did it with a candidate who was my mayor. He was just known, you know, in this state. And then Stefan was the person, one of the people that made this man into a top tier presidential candidate. Like,
oh my God, that's so like, so I always say I'm a Slytherin with a Hufflepuff rising, and like the Hufflepuff in me is like, that's too much individual credit. Like that's, I'm so sorry.
Well, we're both
Pete
Slytherins.
did that.
We're both Slytherins. So, you know, feelings are mutual. But yeah, I mean, we had a great candidate. You know, we had a phenomenal candidate who came from, you know, a red state. And we were able to really show our presence online. And so today, what you guys are going to get is a training that hasn't been done before. So you guys are going to be the first folks to see this new training from Stefan. And I am so excited for that. And so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to the expert, because we've already had our time to chat, but he's the man who knows how to make the magic happen. So I'm here to introduce to you my friend, my brother, Stefan Smith.
Oh my God. One, that was an introduction. I'm so incredibly thankful to be here. I'm so glad to help support the work you're doing, which is like, I think one thing that Pete proved and one thing that the campaign proved, you know, we talked about, and we on the campaign talked about the diversity numbers on our campaign in terms of, you know, 30% LGBTQ, more majority women making more than men on average on our campaign. I think it was something like 40% people of color. One of the things that isn't discussed enough is how many people and key departments were young.
Oh yeah.
Like department head after department head after department head, younger than 35. This was a campaign not just trying to elect the first millennial candidate president, but like staffed at almost every single level for months with people our age. And then of course, you know, the grown folks came in August.
Right.
The deputy campaign managers came in August. But even then, it was like super young oriented, and it felt young. And you saw things like that reflected in the rules of the road. So to give a preview of what I really want today to be about and why today is a new-ish presentation is one of the things that we pioneered and really worked hard on our campaign was engaging our supporters online. Making them feel as if they had a seat at the table, giving them tasks, supporting them, making sure they were given the stuff they needed to succeed. And so a lot of people on the other side of this talk about, you know, our online army, our online supporters, you know, Team Pete, and how like a lot of people talk about that, but I think a lot of people don't realize how that came about. Some of that is just the power and it was an organic moment, but some of that can be built. And some of that can be replicated on races that aren't just the presidential. We're talking like all the way down to the very lowest level. Like the tips and tricks and strategies that we developed are not like cut from whole cloth. We didn't reinvent the wheel. We just assembled the car in a different way. And it outperformed. And I think that's the thing. So what I wanted to do on this presentation is something that I don't think we do enough of in politics, which is take you behind the scenes, take you behind the curtain, and explain to you at the upper levels what was happening. Why did digital captains get built? What problems was it trying to fix, and how was it structured? What were the theoretical underpinnings of our online engagement strategy? Because spoiler alert, if you don't know me, I am a huge nerd. So of course I've read the literature, and of course the presentation you're about to see has citations and footnotes. Okay.
Oh yeah. If you guys know, on the campaign, he would walk into rooms and be like, "Oh my God, did you guys read this academic article on digital organizing?" We're all just like, "No."
No, but like they didn't need to read it because of course the professor in me is like, well, then let me tell you about so all of this stuff is replicable. All of this stuff you can take and do. So I'm gonna share my screen and hope all of this works. Share. No, I hit the wrong share. Now I'm doing this. This is what happens when I'm telling you, I'm really great at some things. All right. Are we all seeing the same screen? Online organizing, empowering supporters in online environments?
Yeah, right. Looks good to me.
Perfect. Here we go. So I think before we get started, again, the academic in me is really big on definitions. I want us to work from a place where we're speaking the same language. So when I'm saying online organizing, keep in mind that one, all organizing should be online. When we say online organizing, it should be redundant. Organizing, it's 2020, all organizing should be or have digital components. But when I'm saying online organizing, I'm saying using digital media and online spaces to generate excitement, increase efficiency, identify leads, and tell the story of our campaign. So this is something I presented to our Marathon State regionals, right? Like this is my definition and this is how I've always sort of thought about it. Because to me, it's not always about just organizing in the traditional sense. We need to be thinking about how does all of the pieces of what we're doing online tell a cohesive story and pull together a cohesive story. So let's break it down. Can you activate a sense of ownership in supporters? Yes. Yes, spoiler alert. Like we knew this was coming. No, you can't. I'm sorry, it can't be done. This is the worst presentation ever. No, of course you can. But you have to give your supporters something they can own. It's not enough to make them, if we go back to the question, can you activate a sense of ownership? That's really passive language. And a lot of campaigns use very passive language. The better way to think about it is, I don't want our supporters to feel like they have ownership. I want them to have ownership. And there's a difference. So I want to talk about theory. And this is, again, something I don't think we do enough on campaigns. There is a tremendous amount of literature out there about politics and about online engagement, about regular organizing. Just in this slide right here, we've got citations going back to 1995. So we need to think about things. There's already a language to think about this stuff, right? So one, let's talk about a gateway political behavior. That is an activity that's done with the intent of influencing government action. And it usually comes at a low cost to the person who engages in them. That's why it's called a gateway political behavior, because it's supposed to be something, it's supposed to be a very easy barrier, the lowest barrier. All you have to do is walk through it. And when we talk about easy behaviors, we're talking about easy political behaviors online. We're talking about things like commenting on someone else's political post, liking something, retweeting something, sharing something. Those are easy political behaviors. And the literature tells us that a like is not like meaningless. Enough likes on a candidate's post translates eventually to something that's in the hard political behavior category.
Mm-hmm.
A hard political behavior is when you create your own political content. So that's when a supporter posts their own status. They're not liking or retweeting somebody else's. They're making their own status about you, about your candidate, right? And so once you've got them, and this is Dr. Letitia Bode, once you've got them creating their own content, now we can start moving them up the ladder of engagement. And that's just if you're a regular traditional organizer, that makes sense to you. But you don't think the ladder, a lot of organizers don't think the ladder goes down as far as it does, right? It goes all the way down to liking a post. And so that means we have to build structures that go all the way down to help that person get up. The way we build those structures is something called the participation triangle. I swear to God, the participation triangle, once I learned what it was, changed my life. Because you've been in politics long enough, you know already intrinsically this stuff, but when you see it graphed out, it changes things. So there are 3 things to keep in mind when you're building structures that you want people to partake in. Political participation requires resources, and by resources, we mean skills, time, or money. It requires engagement, which means the person or consumer of the content or whatever you're doing has to have interest and like be motivated. The content has to be good. Shortcut. And mobilization. Someone has to ask or encourage you to get involved. What I mean by that is like when you're online, asking someone to saying get involved in this moment, take action, do something, and not including a link, then you haven't made it. You failed the participation triangle.
Yep.
You may have asked the right time. It may have been engaging content, but you haven't given them a way to get involved. So once you think about what structures you're building, right? So let's just go back. Right here, we know what an easy political behavior and a hard political behavior is. We know that we need to build the ladder of engagement down a little bit further than perhaps we're used to building it, all the way down to the level of a like. Well, how do you get a like? We pop over to the participation triangle. It's by creating content and doing things that hit all 3 points. And when you hit all 3 points, it makes it much more likely that someone's going to be able to take an action, to sign up for your email list, to sign up to come knock doors if we're ever allowed to knock doors, to come to your virtual phone bank, whatever we're doing, it makes it so much easier. So that's one way you have to, it's a new lens you just have to add to your work. Does this thing we're proposing, and it can be anything, does this proposed campaign rally, does this proposed block cleanup, does this proposed phone bank, does it meet all 3 of these things? Are we promoting it? Like, it's a way of clarifying what you're doing and sort of taking yourself out of what's sort of traditional and asking yourself then what's best practice or what should be. So this is the most important slide. You know that because I titled it the most important slide. The cost of a political behavior is important because people have limited time, attention, and resources to devote to politics. So for most of the people, for most of the time, the psychological costs and inconvenience of finding political information, processing it, and engaging with it in some way is a significant barrier to participation. And research shows that the lower the cost of participating, the more people will do it. I know it sounds simple, but we don't always think about this, especially when it comes to things like online. So to give you an example of this is we think in terms of like videos. Everybody wants to make really, really, really amazing videos on the campaign side. I love a good video. Our video director, Carrie, is amazing.
Shout out to Carrie.
Shout out to Carrie. I love good videos. But if you're poor or you live in a rural area, you may not have reliable data in your area. So that means if you're a campaign who's relying on video after video after video, you are intrinsically leaving out the poorest. And you're leaving out those who are most insecure from the internet, which are usually people that Democrats should be trying to reach, right? So that means we're not hitting the participation triangle. We're not making it easy for someone to get into our lane because they can't spare the minutes to even watch the videos, or it won't load the data. So that's the way to think about it. It's hard. We work in politics, so we imagine it's super easy to find smart political commentary, to find the truth. If you want to get involved, you go here and you click this link. Like, we assume it's so easy because we do it all the time. It's not.
Right.
And we need to make sure that we make the cost of participation, especially online, as low as humanly possible. So the goals of online organizing are to activate our supporters, to promote the candidate, and to engage voters. I had a version of this presentation years and years ago where I'd be like, ape, you have to ape it. And it's like, activate, promote, engage. We're not in person, so I'm not going to make everybody on this call chant APE, ape. But
if you want to, right
if you
now,
want to, if you just want to make it happen, this is what our goals are. And we did it. So if you think of something super simple that the Pete campaign did, and they did this 2 weeks before I officially started. So like, this was HyperAct. This was Pete for America 1.0. And one of their very first decisions was to hand supporters the design toolkit. On a level that no campaign had ever done before, we put the entire brand in your hands. And the social science research says that that's dangerous because it gives people control over the brand, and they can make memes, and right? A lot of campaigns don't put all of this stuff out there when they're running because they're afraid about how it gets used. Instead, the Pete campaign said, no, go. Part of that is an ethos, and that can be replicated. Part of that is also strategic brilliance. When the Pete campaign started, I was the 17th person hired on the campaign, and I started April 22nd or something. Like, he'd been running for president at that point. Like, his exploratory committee was 3 months old.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't, it was only 17 people. We didn't have capacity. So what we did is, when we gave the brand to supporters, we increased our capacity because they were able to make their own Facebook groups. They were able to make their own banners. They were able to make their own one sheets. They were able to, seize the means of production and make their own products because we gave it to them and they owned it. But let's talk about what happens when you've done this and it's not enough. I want to walk you through the anatomy of the worst month on the campaign. And the reason I want to do this is because when you see it laid out like this, and you see what was happening, you understand then why it was so important we had to give so much to our supporters.
Oh yeah. I'm so glad you're doing this. I'm glad you're doing this.
Like, let's talk about it. So this is the back half of November. On November 18th, the Des Moines Register released a poll showing that Pete was leading in Iowa. On the 19th, there was a poll out showing us up 10 points in New Hampshire. On the 20th, we had the debate and we released our tax returns from McKinsey. On the 21st, Kamala Harris accuses Pete of conflating queerness with race and racism. On the 22nd, a prominent South Bend council member endorsed a rival. On the 24th, comments that Pete had said about education had been misconstrued and seen over 1 million times. On the 25th, Pete Buttigieg is a lying motherfucker was published. The 26th was the rebuttal piece because Pete called him. That was the fallout from lying motherfucker. On the 27th, Kavanaugh lawyers had donated to our campaign. That money was returned. And then a Politico piece dropped about Latino support. On the 28th, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez attacked Pete's stance on education. On the 29th, Cory Booker launched an ad calling himself the other Rhodes Scholar mayor, a subtle dig against Pete. This is all, again, in a row.
Whew, and I remember all of this very
and now we're in December. There's a video, Pete's made a remark about slow to realize whether or not South Bend schools were fully integrated. On the 3rd, the Salvation Army photo scandal began because a photo of Pete helping solicit donations from the Salvation Army caused a Twitter storm. On the 4th, the South Bend endorsement event was crashed by activists, leading to a very famous shot of Miss Gladys, I believe, with a cane.
Oh, yeah, her sister, Miss Bernice, yeah.
Miss Bernice. On the 5th, the New York Times op-ed wrote a piece saying we needed to disclose McKinsey clients, and then Lawrence O'Donnell attacked us that night. On the 7th through the 8th, the McKinsey attacks escalate. Warren is now boosting them. On the 9th, we opened our campaign fundraisers to the public. On the 10th, McKinsey gave us permission to release the clients. On the 11th, we were accused of fixing bread prices in Canada. On the 12th, Warren attacked us on big money, and the fundraisers Pete were attending were crashed with the hashtag Wall Street Pete. And on the 15th, photos from a wine cave appear online. So that was a month. Whew. Whew. Everybody unclench your jaw.
That was therapy right there.
Oh my God, that was a month. But no, I'm not commenting, and I want to make this clear. I'm making no comment on any of these as events in of themselves. I am not defending or not defending. This is not about whether any of these things matter. The point is that we started to win and then came under this barrage of attacks online. And it was consistent. And it ran for an entire month. For an entire month online, there's a saying on Twitter, for instance, that every day Twitter has one villain, right? And you never want that day to be you. We were Twitter villains for days at a time. And people like to say that doesn't have an effect, but, and this is again me taking you behind the curtain, it did. Let's talk about the bad place. Declining platform growth. There was a 70% drop on Twitter in terms of new followers. There was a 77% drop in new Instagram followers. First days, the first time we had ever gone negative in terms of negative follower growth happened during this period, I think December 11th through the 14th. And there was a significant drop in overall reach. Declining growth, of course, led to declining engagement. Negative engagement more than doubled. Average retweets dropped 61% between October and December. Likes decreased 58.2%. Replies increased, primarily negative, though. Before all of this started, I had launched a thing with our intern, Raphael. I love Raphael. Where Raphael, to the Pete for America account, kept track of every negative tweet someone tweeted at Pete for America. And we charted it by topic and issue area so that we could reply or prepare for previous attacks. So we graphed that. So when I turned super negative, we were able to see it happen in real time without having to do an expensive sort of sentiment analysis that would take super long. The replies turned negative. Not from people who typically support us, but from new people just jumping in, being agitated online. Mm-hmm. And declining impressions. Average organic impressions fell from 1.8 million to 1.32 million from November to December on Twitter. We took a huge hit, but none of this is actually the biggest hit. The biggest hit was lagging supporter enthusiasm. I went online and just asked all the online Pete supporters who had been with us from the beginning, what's going on here? You're not tweeting as much as you used to. You're not retweeting as much as you used to. You're not talking about Pete as much as you used to. And a lot of them came back to me with stories of they felt directionless, they felt despondent, and they were afraid of being attacked themselves. While all of this was happening, the more rabid supporters from other campaigns were jumping on our supporters and staff members. This was at the same time that staff members, right, were staff members. We were being dragged for not being Black, and some of us were being called Uncle Toms, and this was during that stretch. It was very nasty online. And our supporters, a lot of whom had joined Twitter or joined, followed us on Snapchat, joined Instagram, had gone onto platforms for us, no longer felt safe voicing their support for us. Supporters did not see a space for themselves in this new negative environment. And we had not given them one to own. So that's where we were. That's what was happening. And it's hard to move people up a ladder of engagement when your supporters aren't excited. You're not reaching as many people. Like, the conversation around you is toxic. Other people's supporters are making it uncomfortable to be a supporter of Pete online. It was the bad place, right? So I started thinking, can you activate a sense of ownership in supporters? I thought we had. I thought we had. But clearly we hadn't done enough. So I started reading. Because I'm a nerd, and Ariel's laughing, but I started reading. And I started reading all the old articles I could about Hillary's program in 2016, about Bernie's program in 2016, about elections that were happening in Sweden. There's a lot of social science research around platforms happening in Scandinavia. One of the best research universities for social media and new media communications is in the Netherlands. So a lot of research looks at that. So I'm reading international language and domestic about online engagement and supporters. I'm looking at the numbers, which are freaking me out. I'm looking at our supporters who are becoming despondent. These people that I'd interacted with online literally almost all year. So
I remember this moment like vividly.
No,
We were in Sam's office.
Yeah.
Sam Steelman, who was Marathon Stage Director. Love her. I remember when you were talking about the articles that you had read and how you were about to revamp everything and give our supporters some power. So I'm excited for you to dive into this part.
So part of what I read was about how other campaigns organize their supporters online. And when it comes to supporter networks, when it comes to online armies, the elephant in the room is always Bernie Sanders. So this is the slide about Bernie. There's a great article, you'll see the footnote for on the next slide, where they interview Bernie Sanders' digital director from 2016. They interview supporters of his, and they use social science research to sort of get a sense of what was happening over there. And as I can best guess, and this is honestly, I don't know if this is 100% true, it was an academic article, but they had their official campaign platforms and apps. That's just normal. Hillary had those, etc. And then they had a link, not a strong link, to the People for Bernie Sanders. The People for Bernie Sanders is a very large, very powerful Facebook, Twitter group. They're very active online. They weren't official, but they were official, right? In the sense that, according to the article, campaign staffers did communicate with the leaders of the People for Bernie Sanders. But then under the People for Bernie Sanders, you had things like Bernie Sanders dank meme stash or the various Reddit subgroups, right? And that was the Wild West. The campaign staffers did not touch that part of the Bernie Sanders community. They made a sort of, seemingly, it seems, conscious decision not to play there, although they did benefit. So when we think of hashtags like Feel the Burn, Feel the Burn came from Bernie Sanders' dank meme stash, floated up to the People for Bernie Sanders, and eventually migrated over to the official platforms. And even then was still used very sparingly. The organized effort to promote the 2016 Bernie Sanders presidential campaign online was a hybrid of traditional top-down campaigning and the sorts of digitally enabled grassroots networks that first developed in social movement activism before migrating to the field of electoral party politics. But when you look at this system, there's an obvious problem. The Sanders 2016 case study suggests that the cultural Wild West of Reddit subgroups and other crowdsourced online communities like Bernie Sanders' dank meme stash presents a double-edged sword for campaigns in the social media age. On the one hand, these spaces open up valuable opportunities for self-organized connective action. On the other hand, they also open up the door to controversial behaviors and content that can damage campaigns' reputations, particularly as oppositional forces are incentivized to magnify them for tactical gain. So what we're talking about here are Bernie bros. The vast majority of Bernie Sanders supporters are fantastic people. They're passionate. They're just like Team P people. They're very passionate and they're good people trying to change the world, right? But they have a vocal minority that come from that unregulated space that turn toxic. And because they turn toxic and we're doing it so publicly, they tarnish the whole brand. So what I learned from this was, all right, how did Pete build our online engagement program? How can I build one that learns all these lessons, that fixes the problems that we were having in December from the bad month, that builds stable ladders of engagement that go all the way down to the bottom and that are easy for people to climb? So all I was trying to do was completely invent online organizing by myself in like a weekend. And so this is what I did. And this is the first time this image is being released publicly. It's the thing that I think other campaigns have started to use. We're seeing it more implemented as the Pete volunteers go out into the world. But this is version 1.0 of what I built. So the digital captains, as I envisioned them, were meant to solve our online engagement problems from the bad month by giving away pieces of the campaign. Things that campaigns typically never let their supporters do or brought them in on, I figured out a way and really wanted to show a way that we could give them to supporters and do better than we anticipated. So you look at something like the volunteer data team, which was one of my favorite teams, oddly enough. You think it would be content, but the data team, the first task they had was how big is the ecosystem online? We had all these amazing Pete supporters and Pete communities all around. We didn't know how big they were. The second task is they helped us figure out how to pull the Twitter API to do our digital door knocking, to pull our followers. They helped do the first round of sorting when we went through to give everyone a score on a 1 to 5 before we digitally door knocked supporters, right?
Yep.
I think about our state and local team. One of the things, Samantha Steelman is a genius. I love her. And so much of the work she had already built before I moved over to her department as online engagement director was about volunteer capacity. There were already these amazing, amazing networks that already existed. We just needed some place to coordinate them. And so we had a wonderful state and local team. We had a content team. Having the idea, and this wasn't just asking supporters, hey, make a graphic for Pete. Although we did do some of that, right?
Oh yeah, they made some great graphics.
Listen, they were making some wonderful graphics. They were doing rapid response debate graphics for all of our debates and appearances so that they could augment what we were putting out on the official side.
Oh,
like
yeah.
they had their own transcriptions going on in Word docs and in the Slack. So during debates, so that you can pull quotes that were like, did he say that? Okay, great, because debates move so quickly. Like, on the content team, it wasn't just that stuff, although that stuff was amazing. We were also running content out of the official Pete archives, giving them to people. So, for instance, we had hours of footage of Pete in New York, including a visit to a New York Pete up. we were never going to use that in a product. So I went to Carrie, and Carrie said yes. I went to Alok said yes. And we gave that footage to the New York team. Here's Pete meeting everybody, and because why not? And let them go and make their own stuff, right? From high quality material from our archives that they never would have gotten otherwise, right? The online engagement lag we saw in December, where people weren't retweeting, weren't replying, weren't doing the positive, like we built a hype team, which was essentially a volunteer-led rapid response team. And the reason you don't call it rapid response is because if you call something rapid response, you think you're going to be doing the negative, right? Like, oh, pushing down stories. No, we're going to do a hype team because we wanted to build in the expectation that the goal here is not to tear anything down, but to hype Pete up. And then I think the team I love the most, just because it was the easiest and simplest team, but also it was just like the coolest. Like, I just like love this concept, is the welcome team. And I went, right? Like when I was talking to people about why they weren't tweeting enough, right? Roderica had a really great quote. She said, this summer was the summer of belonging, but this must be the winter of truth. And I was like, oh, right. Everybody I was talking to was talking about how they felt in the summer when being a Pete supporter, you said you like Pete and everybody found you and you got so many new followers and people were commenting, and like that energy and excitement and that validation, like I loved it. You felt like you were joining something special. And that kind of, people kept telling me in December that feeling had gone away. So the welcome team brought that feeling back and then some. Mm-hmm. Their job was to scour the internet and like, is this a Pete supporter? Is this somebody that like said something positive about Pete in a tweet or on Facebook or wherever? Like they would then go and swarm them and give them a digital hug. Oh my God, you like Pete, like I like Pete, et cetera, right? And that feeling of goodwill, of being supported, of like, I said something positive about Pete and then all these super nice people jumped out to say, hey, like that was just like, to me, the opposite of how the internet usually works.
Oh yeah.
And it was led beautifully. Like I love that team, and that team did such amazing work. But the point is that all these teams were specifically built to address specific problems on the campaign, but we gave enough ownership. All of these teams were volunteer-led. The teams elected their own leaders. Yeah. The teams created their own charters and governing bodies. How do you kick somebody out? What's the process for a complaint? Like they built those structures themselves. I just told them they had to do it. I was like, you like govern yourself, because like I don't have time to govern you. I'm only one person. But also govern yourself because it's the right thing to do. Like, and they did. And there was never a problem. So anyway, so that's the thing to think about. I think when we're empowering our online supporters, we need to be thinking about communication. So bring your supporters inside the tent and share with them your wants and needs. You need to be thinking about your tasks and your needs, like provide structure, but then allow supporters to take action on your behalf. Give them some of your Legos to play with. They're going to build different things than you thought you were going to build with those Legos, but I promise 9 times out of 10, they're going to build something that's sturdy and you wouldn't have thought of it. Give them some Legos to play with. Goals and metrics. Work with online organizers to set clear goals and then help them achieve them by giving people clear ownership. Let people own. So when I think about the first week's successes from the Digital Captains program, it was out for a week, test run. It was already helping with ballot access in Rhode Island. It was already doing the signature collection shifts. It was already building for the Ryan Richards happy hour event. It already was testing the relational site. It was building for the Iowa call thing. It was doing road trip promotion. It was trying to get people to Iowa. I think about the Liz and Mike virtual events. The reason we were able to do so many virtual events is because our online supporters got re-engaged. And we were doing digital events before COVID. And they opened up an entirely new revenue stream for us because we knew we had an audience that wanted to see more. And then things like rapid response with events, endorsements, amplifications, DM groups, and that sort of thing that got built. And that was all in the first week. So like, again, everyone can organize online, even you. Let's do the question and answer. I think I ended it with 15 minutes left. That was the goal.
Yeah, we have, we'll hard stop at 1:30. So we'll take the next, 15 minutes to go ahead, and take some questions. So if you guys have questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box, and we'll go ahead and have Stefan answer them. But this was great. You guys got a real inside scoop of the campaign, like literally insider knowledge from month to month on what was going on and how we dealt with it.
Right.
And yes, somebody asked if this is going to be available for rewatch. So all of our trainings for IYD convention are recorded, and we will house this on our website for folks to be able to have access to, because we want our IYD members to be able to have this. And so, you know, if you're on a campaign, we want to make sure that you're equipped with the information that you need. And also, you know, opportunity for Stefan to also take this on the road and do this again. Looks like we have a question from CJ Mayer. He says, you mentioned providing the structure and goals and metrics and then letting the teams run with it. What metrics did you find the most useful?
I don't want to say, and the only reason I don't want to say is because the correct answer to this question is you let them set their own metrics. You're going to know as you do it what's actually worth it. Your audience is going to be completely different. So if I say something like, we were judging everything by Facebook signups, like your audience may not be on Facebook. That may not be a valid metric for you. So the smart thing to do is have them work together as one of their first projects and have that be, what are the metrics by which we're going to judge success?
Great. All right. Oh, Mateo Vidal is one of our interns from PFA, and he's in the audience right now, and he's seen it all too. So thank you for being here, Mateo. Aaron, how do you envision your 2.0 rollout for campaign digital engagement going? What are the strengths that you want to supercharge going forward?
I am already working on like what has to be like 5.0 of this at this point. like that version you just saw, like it doesn't even include the finance team we're about to launch. Like I would do this completely different if this was a general election. The thing to remember is like what a version for me that this would look like is it would be even more local. It would be way more platform specific. Instead of thinking like that's the thing we have a huge problem with is we assume the internet. When we say the internet, it's the internet. Everybody's internet is different and everybody's experience with the internet is different. So I would make it way more platform specific. I would make it way more local.
Awesome. And I'm sure we'll get more trainings from you in the future. We would love to have you back. All right. Next question is from Lee Walter. Did you have any particular challenges in organizing content for Black, Latino, and AAPI audiences? And is there anything that you would have done differently in hindsight? Relatedly, how do we organize people who are offline in our online but necessity COVID-19 area?
Girl, that's a good one, and it's a lot. All right, so did you have any particular challenges in organizing content for? I didn't have any problems organizing it. I think the most important thing when you're doing content for audiences of color is having to explain probably to like white people that content has to look a little different and it has to, because it performs a different function. Yeah. And so one of the things we did that I was very proud of on Pete's campaign on the content team is we had a 2-hour workshop about how to tell inclusive stories through content. And it was our content people were there and our distribution team was there. And it was very good. I helped lead that workshop. So we thought about it very specifically. I think going back, I think I probably would have done that workshop sooner. Relatedly, how do we organize people who are offline in our online by necessity COVID era? People who are offline are still connected some way, right? So if we can't get to them because they're offline, maybe their meals are being delivered by their granddaughter and we need to get to the granddaughter. Or maybe they're still going to their church. And so we need to be thinking about relational organizing through religious relational organizing. Like there's ways to get to them. I think the question should always be like, online is great, but it is not going to be everything. So we should just prepare for situations where if somebody's truly offline, we may need to meet them offline and figure out how. You mind if I take this? I'm just going to do a quick speed round because I know we've got like 12 minutes left.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is the full build of a president. What's the biggest lesson that you think translates most to smaller local campaign? What does sharing the Legos look like for small local campaign? It means you might, like on a small campaign, you're probably dealing with something like just a Facebook is your primary means of communicating or organizing, since it's the lowest tech solution. So like giving away your Legos would be like letting your volunteers or supporters or your most ardent supporters run your grassroots group. So if you have a like most campaigns would not give away the keys to their Facebook to their supporters, but like I bet if you do that, it's going to be way quicker and way more responsive. The replies to your constituents are going to feel way more personal because it's going to be people that they know. So it could just think about what your campaign's doing and think about realistically, would this hurt? Not be different, hurt if we gave it to our supporters. And if it doesn't hurt, give it. Thank you so much. The Digital Captains program was super empowering, and have the toolkit from the get-go made me feel like I was doing real work for the campaign. You were doing real work. That's the thing though, is like when you were making graphics, you were making those graphics because you cared enough about Pete to do it and put in that work and do that labor to spread his message. And that was especially important at the beginning where we didn't have the labor to do that. Mateo, more serious question. How do you envision this being leveraged for down ballot campaigns without rapid media attention? I think the thing about media attention is like, as I've learned both on the campaign sitting, for a long time, 10 feet from the comms table, the comms U, I think media attention is easier to get if there's already a crowd of people moving in that direction. So if you're not getting media attention, you organize the people, and if you organize the people well, the attention will come. So like, I have no doubt that Pete supporters being so loud and vocal on Twitter, especially with the blue check marks, like seriously helped us online get taken more seriously and helped tell the story, especially of the Iowa buildup, so much of which happened online. Like having constant people tweeting out personal news. I'm an organizer in Iowa now for Pete, and that goes boom, 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 back to back. Like the reporters took that seriously. So you can move narratives on certain platforms by just organizing well.
Looks like we have some questions in the Q&A part too, if you want to jump over.
I'll jump over. Are you, Stefan, committed to campaign work, or do you do digital public relations work or would you do public relations work for a sitting administration? Answered live. Yeah. I mean, I don't think of opportunities like, where do I need to be next? I think of opportunities in terms of where can I do the most good? I have like no interest. And I think this is like why my relationship with Pete's campaign is so different, is like, and a lot of presidential campaigns is like, I'm in places because I want to be there, not because I care about my resume, because I was an academic before this and I had a pretty good resume. Like the worst case scenario is I go and finish my PhD and then you have to call me Dr. Stefan Smith. Like my worst case scenario is not a worst case scenario. So in politics, I get to just follow my heart. Did you see any negative consequences? This is Monica. Did you see any negative consequences to bringing supporters into the campaign in this new way? How did you mitigate them? There were accounts that popped up that were clearly pretending to be PETA like supporters and then tweeting negative things or things that could be interpreted wrong. And like that bothered me, and that was bad for the brand. But what was really good is eventually I got permission to just swat those down from my personal Twitter, and we would mass report them. And so
that too, but also our supporters would flag that stuff for us ahead of time. So building a digital army, we didn't even have to do the work half the time to know that those accounts existed.
Right. Julian Winborn, a number of chapters are working on growing their social media following and organizing. Many of them have Facebook and Twitter pages that attract the same followers. That does happen. Where can chapters start in growing their following and engaging with their audiences consistently? You need to go to new places. So you shouldn't be just talking on your Facebook and Twitter pages, although that's important. You should have your supporters do a digital audit. What are the most important Facebook and Twitter pages, non-political, just the biggest and most poppin' in your area, and put supporters in there and have them post and share your posts into those groups. And then hopefully people are interested in that and follow it back to the main page. That's like how I would do that. Oh, Christine, hi. How can we apply to what we learned about digital organizing from BFA to other campaigns, particularly down ballots that don't have national infrastructure, such as presidential campaigns? Just do it. If you see something that needs to be done, go and do it. Like that's how you do it. This is not a time to like people don't know what they're doing. A lot of people don't know what they're doing right now. And I say that as somebody who doesn't always know what they're doing. Like at this point, if you see something and you can do something to help, you should just do that thing to help. And then they'll figure out like how to bring you into the infrastructure when they can. Like a lot of this could be applied down ballot. Anonymous, what would you have done differently to combat the misinformation online? I think we needed more robust fact checking. We needed to take things more seriously. I think there's an axiom that I hate, which is that Twitter is not real life. And people say that because people say that like, oh, I don't have to take it that seriously, or oh, I'm having a bad day, so it doesn't matter. But that's wrong. It's just wrong. And I hate to be like that blunt, but it's wrong. One, you're telling on yourself because Twitter is entirely based on who you follow. So if your Twitter doesn't represent the world or America, if it's not as diverse as America, if it's not speaking for America, that's on you because you're following the wrong people. But two, the problem with like Twitter is not real life is that actually in certain respects, Twitter is better than real life. You get to see you can influence blue check marks. And like I saw it on Pete's campaign, you can watch attacks migrate to other platforms. You can see it like move super quickly. So like it has a ripple effect. And so if you don't smother misinformation on one platform as quickly as possible, it's going to spread to the others. So we needed to be more robust. And that's, again, why we needed a hype team. A lot of the hype team was flagging things for us and for other people on the campaign. Like, this is a thing, people are saying this, and like allowed us to get ready. Brooke Kessler, how do you suggest organizing supporters to create non-political posts on platforms such as Pinterest or gaming sites? I think at that point you need to start with something apolitical like the census, or start organizing around something that's like less partisan, like local politics maybe, and then work your way up. If you're afraid of going straight in, I think non-political, I think again, it's about who do you know and how can you get them all together engaged in an activity. Because the way you can do that for a garden party or to sell your bells on Animal Crossing or whatever is the same way you would do it if we were trying to get somebody's vote. So it's really about getting those skills more so than like thinking about non-political content. How can you go into a little bit more detail on digital door knocking? How did you verify identities on Twitter, Facebook accounts, and canvass them? We didn't verify identities. We weren't matching them to the voter file. We were literally using self-reported. On Twitter, at least, they were like, we say we're in Jasper, Alabama. Great, we took you at your face value. And so it's not something that you would put resources on if you had to pay those people because it's too imprecise. It's sort of more of a shotgun blast, but sometimes you're in situations where you need a damn shotgun. How do you suggest implementing all of these social media strategies when the electorate is older, doesn't use Twitter as much, and is less digitally savvy? I don't know. I think Facebook, we had a Facebook thing. We had Facebook versions of some of these in the later iterations of the program. So that's there. You're not going to reach anybody with any one strategy. The hope is that this online strategy is supplemented by a field program that is allowed to do both. Did the campaign ever go negative? I feel like I never saw any why stay positive. Why stay positive? Because Pete's not a negative person.
Yeah.
Like it's literally that simple.
That's so true. That's true. We have 3 minutes left. One thing I want you to touch on that Judd mentioned. Hi, Judd. We love you. Is the investment piece, fundraising. Can you talk briefly about how you can organize digitally online to help increase fundraising and some of the ways even our staffers raise money for the campaign?
Right. Being quick and responsive, taking advantage of moments. One of the first things we did that was sort of fun and light is cute is when Liz Smith was accused of being a fake Nigerian man running a sock puppet account. Listen. And so on a whim, I made the p4a.us/weareliz. So to get people and linked it to a Facebook donate page, being quick and being responsive, making things that are timely and people want to share, coordinating and working together to make sure that financial asks are boosted and elevated. So for instance, I donated $10 retweet if you've got me with your picture of your receipt. So making things shareable, making sure that people get credit, making sure that you're thankful. So for instance, if somebody donates money and gets a like and a comment from a down ballot candidate, like they're going to super care about that. and then building communities of people who are basically just sort of low dollar grassroots bundlers, but on a small scale, to work their friends and networks.
Awesome. Do you have any last words before we wrap up? I know we have so many questions.
Oh my God, all these questions. I'm so bad at this. I'm just so horrible.
No, it's totally fine. We're going to definitely do this again with Stefan. Like, we have to. And so we'll make sure that you guys, have access to this training, and then also to that we do this again, but with another great training that Stefan does. But I'll go ahead and let him close us out real quick on any parting words he has. But I'm so grateful that you did this with me, Stefan. I love you. I miss you. And thank you for doing this work.
You're fantastic. I think here's the thing. I think when campaigns end, there's usually a short postmortem and then you move on. I think there's a lot to learn from this campaign. And I think there's a lot to learn from this cycle in general. And I think the first thing we really need to do is having an honest accounting of what works and what didn't work. And so what I think we need to realize and go forward as you're thinking about races or you're watching this training later is, what is the lowest level thing you can do? And how can you organize around that in existing networks? I think that's the way to think about it. Like, if you go super low to the ground and you make an investment in people, I feel like you're gonna exceed expectations. It's the only way you can take, the mayor of the 4th largest city in Indiana and let him win Iowa 7 times. So anyway, hopefully that's helpful.
No, that's so great. Thank you guys so much. We have some other trainings that are getting ready to start. If you don't know already, we have building your story training, and then also how to build a Democratic coalition in a red state. So if you go ahead and hop on over to our convention website, you can go ahead and get registered for those trainings. But thank you, Stefan, for everything today. And for everybody who tuned in with us, thank you. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Bye, y'all.